Hello, hello. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. This is a first for the channel. I am joined by indie author Ketki Palande, who has just published her latest novel, Big Island Middle School. It is a quirky, funny story about a group of students and staff on a middle school in the San Francisco Bay, and the proceeds go to a wonderful organization. Ketki, would you like to take it away with your own intro and expand on your novel?
Yes, hi. Hi, Ben. My name is Ketki Palande. I'm super excited to be here on this channel. And yeah, like Ben mentioned, I just self-published my book, Big Island Middle School, about 2 weeks ago. And I'm just selling it to try and raise money for UNICEF since the COVID-19 crisis is really bad in other countries still. And UNICEF is doing some cool things to help them out. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Would you mind walking me through your writing story? When and why and how did you get started?
Yeah, sure. It was really random. Like when I first started, it was August 2020 last year, and I wasn't really aiming to write a book or anything. I think I was just thinking like, oh, I wonder what it would be like to go to school on an island. And what if they made kids swim? Like, haha, how funny would that be? And have you read Sideways Stories from Wayside School by Lewis Satcher?
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah, I was thinking of that book when I started writing the first story, the Principal Patel story, which is still the first story in the book. And I wrote that. And then I wrote maybe like two or three more stories and then totally forgot about that whole Google Doc until December. And then I picked it back up, wrote two more stories, again, forgot about it until March. And then March, I read all my stories and I was like, wow, I like these. These aren't bad. And I started editing them. And I found a lot of people on Reddit to help me critique them and stuff. And it was really fun. And then I wrote about 20 stories total. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I think I might have something that I might want to publish.
And have you always been inclined towards writing stories, or where did that journey really begin?
Yeah, I think I've always been kind of writing stories since I was a kid. And have you heard of NaNoWriMo,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
National Writing Month? Yeah, I did that as a kid, or I was 12 years old and I did it. And it was really fun, but I wrote a book. It was 6,000 words only. And I don't know, it wasn't very good at all. But my parents encouraged me to self-publish it because NaNoWriMo, the Young Writers Program specifically, they helped kids self-publish their books. So I did that, and it was a bad book, but it was my first book. And then a few years later, I realized it showed up under my name when you Googled it, and I was just so embarrassed. But yeah, I think I was thinking of that book a lot when I was thinking of self-publishing this book because I wanted to kind of like redeem myself and have a better book under my name and just do it again, but do it better. But in between, I haven't been like a super avid writer, honestly. I've always liked writing and I write stories here and there. But yeah, but how about you? Because you have an entire channel about writing.
Well, my channel is just getting started, so it's not as impressive as you're making it out to be. But I really do appreciate that. So for me, I started writing basically when I was 18, so a decade and a half ago, because I watched as chance encounters set off chains of events, which just grew more and more absurd. So, for example, my freshman year, when I was really starting to start getting into writing, I was, meeting the other engineers in the dorm room, and I was down the hall. We had the door open. We were all just hanging out in somebody's room, and we were playing this even then retro game on the Super Nintendo called Secret of Mana. And this other guy just happened to walk by, recognize the soundtrack, recognize it as retro, recognize it as interesting, and just come in and start talking to us. And that led to me playing this dangerous game, which is it's like rugby. It's called Atlas, where you're just running at each other and you're playing with this giant medicine ball. And he ended up tackling me badly, so he broke his own leg. And then a decade later, he was one of the groomsmen at my wedding. So you have me deciding to just hang out, meet new people, playing a video game, somebody overhears it, and then 10 years later, we're still friends, we're really good friends, and he's just somebody staying upside with me when I was getting married. And just those chains of events, I started writing some of them down and adding in fantastical elements to them. And those fantastic elements actually made them more believable. So I tend to write stories involving or tangentially related to people in my life, and then just adding all these other elements to them. And it's always interesting when beta readers come back and tell me, oh, this and this isn't believable. And it's something that actually happened. So yeah, that's always fun.
Okay, gotcha. What kind of genre would you say? Would you say it's like contemporary that you write?
I bounce back and forth between urban and fantasy. Sorry, between fantasy and science fiction, and I'm right now in this urban fantasy series that I'm working on. It's about a group of teenagers, and they travel across time and across dimensions and across worlds, and so it just becomes ever more expansive.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. And how about you? So one of the things that really impressed me about your novel was that even from the first story, so Principal Patel, within that chapter, I was laughing, I was smiling, and obviously I'm not the target audience, but how were you able to write in such a universal way that was funny for everyone without being too juvenile?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that they were funny. I don't know. I guess when I was writing them, I wasn't planning too many jokes, but I was just kind of writing for the story, and I usually had the character in mind. I guess I knew what kind of character I wanted to write, and then the plot kind of came later. So a lot of the stories I had to change the plot so many times because I ended up hating it. But the humor also, I kind of, I guess, came up with the jokes as I went, and then edited them later. But there were times definitely when I was writing something and I just randomly thought of another joke that could go in another story, such as how I thought, oh, I should have an art class. I don't have any art classes in this book. And then I thought, oh, I can have a fine art class, like, and call it fart. So I wrote that down somewhere else and then I used that later in the book. But yeah.
Yeah, you do have a lot of really cool acronyms, castle and enemies and all this fun stuff.
Thank you. I was really proud of the whole enemies and that BFFs thing. For people who haven't read the book, basically the opening line of one of the stories. The story is about a book fair and these two girls, Anita and Natasha, who are best friends. So I think the first line was Anita and Natasha were BFFs, parentheses, best friends forever, but they were also book fair BFFs, book fair facilitators. And yeah, I was super proud of that line. And then I used the enemies acronym later on and stuff too.
So you mentioned that you started just writing random stories, and then you pulled all the chapters together. Do you normally just do that? Where you write a series of short stories, or do you just have a plan of a novel, like a novella that you're trying to work on, or is it just you write one chapter at a time, or whatever you feel like doing at the moment? What's your writing
Yeah.
process?
Yeah. So I mostly write short stories. I haven't really written any novel length works. And I mean, even this book, it's just a bunch of short stories. And the first few stories I just wrote thinking of random characters that were at a middle school. But then I tried to start to fill out the middle school more. So I started thinking, like, okay, what activities and what classes did I have in middle school? And I was like, oh, I need a math teacher. Let me write about a math teacher. I need to have an art class, a science class, a school dance. So then I started thinking of all those different things and trying to write a story based on that. But definitely the first few stories were just more random. And those were definitely the ones that I edited the most because when I went back and read them, there were like not like plot holes, but there were just lines that were inconsistent with what went on later. Like I think I set the book not in San Francisco at first. It was set in some random ocean that doesn't exist. It was a fictional ocean. So I had to change a lot of random details. But yeah. How about you? What's your writing process like? Are you like a pantser? That's what people call it.
No, 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 no. I plan things down to the minutia. I have an outline that I will then expand into like 20 pages, and it will be so detailed that I'll take direct paragraphs from the outline and then just shove them right in the story. So it's direct quotes between like direct dialogue quotes, direct setting descriptions, Everything is just really, really incremental as I build it up over time. I tend to write. I tend to write during the week, but usually two times. So right after work, and then before I go to bed. And then on Saturdays, I'll start with a long run, and then I'll just come back, read for a little bit, and then I'll do hour-long sprints across the day. So I'll try and get in, a good couple of multiple iterations, so that way I can just progress throughout the day and reflect on what I've done, and then build off of what I'm working on. So I'll start maybe in chapter one. For example, I'll start in chapter one, and then I might go back for a little bit, revise it a little bit in the second sprint, and then just try and move on to chapter two, and so on and so on.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it
Mhm.
sounds like you're super organized. And even just based on how you told me what you told me about your YouTube channel, it sounds like you're super organized. Do you have all your videos planned out already?
A lot of them, yeah, yeah. It's not just that I'm super organized, it's that I take a very long time to actually get things done. So tonight, actually, episode 5 is being posted, and that I believe I recorded in 2019. So it's a very,
Oh,
very,
wow.
I just work really slowly, and then I try and build in time to iterate and improve upon. So I recorded the full episode, and then I edited that. I tried to see where I needed to make improvements. And then it wasn't until this year, with COVID fully underway, where I set up a pattern of where I start recording every single weekend.
Okay.
So last year, I basically was recording once a month, and then taking some time off of there, trying to figure out what I wanted. But so that gives me more than enough time to figure out all these scripts and what I want to say. So
Okay.
it is very well planned out, but it takes a very long time to get there, to get everything lined up.
Yeah. So how long have you been planning to start the YouTube channel for? For two
For
years?
No, 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 no. This predates. This predates. I've been planning this for a long time. I've had. You mentioned that you were on a podcast. Well, I had some good friends who started their own podcast. I probably now a decade ago, and it was all about living life in Northern Virginia. They were extremely talented, the Jabari Brown podcast, and they did it for a handful of years until everybody sort of just went their separate ways, moved across the country, and it was no longer really able to work. But just seeing how much fun they had every week talking about their weekend. I mean, they had outlines and plans, and they would talk about current events or just some random nerdy thing that was coming out that was right when the Marvel universe was really getting started. And so they would just brainstorm and try and think about what was coming out for the next each of the various phases. And it was just so much fun to experience that I just thought, I really want to try to do something like this to incorporate something that I'm passionate about, writing, and in this case, I also built in running to it eventually. But the first ideas of this channel were strictly writing focused, and so I wanted to try and share my passions with an audience.
That's very cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're working on a series right now, right? For the channel?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's based around a marathon is season 1, so that's going to be 26, technically 27 episodes. And then once that completes, the very next thing is you, as a runner, if you finish one race, well, you go back and do another race, except this time faster or a longer distance. So I have, I think, 3 episodes as transition between the seasons where I'm talking about, resting, recovering, and just starting to run again. And I'm going to go right back into another block of 27 episodes. And as I mentioned, because I've been playing this for 2 years, I already have a dozen, 20 different ideas for what I can talk about. Whether or not those fully get developed or whether or not they're worthwhile, I might just toss them as I need to. But the ideas are definitely written down, so I can just pull from whenever I want.
That's cool. Yeah. I feel like the idea of starting a YouTube channel is so fascinating to me. I don't know what I would talk about. It's just so interesting. Like, do you have fun with it?
Sometimes I'm also terrified of being in front of the camera. I really don't like public speaking. I mean, you mentioned that you were in. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the Toastmasters. You mentioned that
Yeah,
you
it's
were doing
Toastmasters.
Toastmasters. Yeah. I don't have that kind of desire to speak in public. So it's kind of a winding road for me. So I am really proud of this channel, but I'm also terrified every time I sit behind this camera.
Oh, no, you shouldn't be. You're doing great. But it's so
Thank you.
and if you hate public speaking and you're scared of being on camera, it's just really interesting that you chose to start a YouTube. I mean, I'm glad you did.
Me too. So a lot of like I said, there's a lot of extremely talented people in my life, and so I watch them daily just going through whatever they're afraid of, and so that kind of inspires me to do my own thing, even though I'm not necessarily comfortable in front of the camera. I'm still willing to try and go out there and try and share my passion, try and share my knowledge, just try and help like-minded people to write better or hone their craft or just learn how somebody else, what processes they go through. And I mean, actually, I would just want to ask you a couple of questions about the publishing effort. I mean, that alone, if you ever wanted to do a YouTube channel about, there's a dire need, especially in the indie publishing world, to share that information.
Yeah, I learned so much about self-publishing just through YouTube. And there are some YouTubers that I just trust so much, and they taught me basically everything I knew and everything I needed to know to publish the book. But
Well,
yeah,
who are your inspirations then?
I really like Bethany Atazada. I think that's how I say her name. Sorry, I think that's how you say her name. Have you heard of her?
No, no, I haven't, but I'll.
Okay. Yeah, there's Bethany Atazada and Abby Emmons and who else? There's blanking on her name, but I can picture her. Um oh my god, sorry, I don't know her name.
No worries.
But yeah, these YouTubers were really helpful because a lot of them have videos just laying out the whole process of self-publishing. So when I already kind of knew the process because I published that book when I was 12, but I wanted to know what it's like to do it with different platforms because I did it with Amazon Create Space and I wanted to know about like Barnes and Noble Press and Lulu and all that stuff. So people have really good detailed videos on YouTube about it.
Sure. And yeah, I mean, that was my point, is that if you ever wanted to share your knowledge, that would be an absolutely worthwhile channel to,
Oh,
start and formulate. So, I'm already trying to brainstorm ideas with you.
oh yeah. No, I don't know. I feel like I really want to do YouTube, but I love watching YouTube.
Great. So within the story itself, there were countless quirky moments. Was there anything that you pulled for being too outrageous?
Kind of. I pulled a lot of stuff. I cut a lot of stuff for different reasons. So one story, it's titled Carl now, and it's written in a poem. And before it was a poem, I had a totally different story about a character named Carl, but he was just totally different character. I only kept the name. And in that story, I think man, how do I explain this? Basically, there was this competition at school, and you could submit a quote, any quote you wanted that you would come up with. And the best quotes would be written on this new school mural that they were making. And so in the story, Carl really wants to win the contest because he wants to be able to take a picture in front of the mural. And he wants his mom to be really proud of him and post pictures of him on WhatsApp with him next to his name on the wall and stuff. And then he and his friend Nora, they plagiarize a quote. Like I think the quote I used was you miss every shot you don't take," or whatever the quote is. And he puts his own name next to it. And then I don't know, the story from that point, like that's where it all just went downhill. I didn't even know how to end it. I didn't know whether he should win the contest or not. And then I had it just ending with him seeing the mural and the quotes up there, but his name's not next to it. So he's like, "Oh, I guess I entered the contest for the wrong reasons. Like I just wanted my name up there." But I don't know, something about that story, it was just not working for me. It was not that funny. And a lot of beta readers and critique partners, they were just constantly saying, like, "Yeah, this story was not my favorite." And here's why. It wasn't funny. The ending doesn't make sense. And I was like, you know what? I agree. And I tried so hard to fix the story, but because I didn't love it, I just decided not to keep it. Um, so another story I had to heavily edit was the one titled Ichiro and Miss O. It's about a boy and his mom. His mom's a teacher and Ichiro is a student at the school. And they go on a field trip and his mom is constantly looking for him. She wants to take a picture with him at the field trip, but he's kind of embarrassed by her, so he doesn't want to. And in the original story, I had her she saw some boy scratching his butt. And so she ran up to him thinking that it was her son Ichiro. And she like slaps his hand and she's like, why are you doing that in public? And then it's not Ichiro, it's his friend. But then I ended up changing that because someone said that it felt kind of inappropriate. And I was like, actually, you're right. That does feel a little inappropriate. But the reason that I had thought of it in the first place was this is kind of going back to what you said about sometimes weird things happen in your own life and you want to write about them. And then people are like, this seems unbelievable. Like, kind of related. My mom actually had done a similar thing to my brother's friend when she was chaperoning their field trip. So that's why I came up with the idea for the story. I wasn't even thinking of it in like an inappropriate way. I just thought it was funny because it actually happened. But when that person gave me that feedback, I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to have anything weird and inappropriate. So I ended up changing it. And the ending is a little bit different. She still embarrasses her son and the son's friend, but yeah, I don't know if I cut anything for being outrageous. If anything, I might have cut stuff for not being outrageous enough because I love outrageous.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
are there a lot of people in your life that you used directly in the story, or is that something that you were trying to, I don't know, avoid?
Kind of. A lot of the stories are inspired from things that happened in my life or in the lives of people around me, but none of the characters are really based on real people. But when I was writing the first draft of the story, each story, I didn't want to spend time thinking of character names. So basically, every single character was the name of like a family member or one of my friends. And then I just went back and did Control F and like replaced those names. And then that led to so many weird like typos because I didn't read it before sending it to the first round of critique partners. And so I had like the word maniacally, someone was maniacally laughing in one of the stories, okay? And I had the name Nia, Nia, changed it to Natasha. So then it says Natasha laughing. And everyone was commenting, like, what's going on here? I was like, oh no, I should have read this. But yeah.
Yep, I too have been I too have caught my own word replace issues. So
Yeah.
they can be rough.
Yeah. What are you working on right now in writing?
Well,
This,
it's that series. So
okay.
I have 2 stories completed in there. I've kind of pushed off really starting the third one because I'm trying to edit those and get them ready to be submitted for edits and critique partners, etc. So I'm really trying to push through with those rather than start a third story. I feel like when I was writing the second book, I got a lot of comments from my family of, isn't it crazy to be working on a second book when you haven't finished the first one? And it did feel like a bit of a moving target, but it also helped me build in minor details. So it could strengthen certain moments and build in a lot of really important foreshadowing. So it kind of worked out, but I think if I get into a third book, the cascading changes, if I make anything drastic in the first book, would just be too much to account for.
Yeah, that makes sense. It must be kind of difficult to keep track of two full books and all the plot and everything. Is it the same characters?
Yes, it is the same characters, so they build off of each other. And it's not really until the third book that they split off and go down different plot paths. So that's an entirely different thing, which I haven't actually dealt with yet. I mean, within the first and second books, everybody sort of is together, or they might break off for a chapter or two, but they are mostly following the exact same plot line. And then in book 3, everything's going to kind of diverge quite a bit. So That is going to be interesting to figure out how I want to tackle it. I have all of the, again, going back to the outline and the deep plans, I have everything mapped out, and then I have these like, I have the 3x structure, everything just mapped out onto that, and then I have it diverge and sort of follow its own path as well. So it is a mess with note cards, but it does kind of make sense from my own writing process.
Okay, I see. Yeah, you mentioned editing and I think critique partners, right?
Yes.
What's your process like? Because I know for me, figuring out how to even find critique partners was so difficult, but what do you do?
I've tried a lot of different things. I've basically thrown spaghetti at the wall. So you mentioned YouTube channels. So there's this one that I watch and follow called Writing with Jenna Moresi, and she has this Discord channel where you can ask for critique partners, and I've had mixed mixed responses within that. I've had a couple of DNFs did not finish within once I find a beta reader and critique partner, and I honestly don't remember how this person found me, but he kind of created his own Discord channel, and he set it up so now we have a group of 5 people and we sort of critique each other's works. So that's one way of doing it. There's also this interesting site. It's CC, so I think it's Critique Readers. Critique. I'll have to check it. I can throw it up in the description. Actually, that is coming up in a much later video, but you submit your critiques, you submit a chapter at a time, and it's just kind of a forum where you can have up to 7 people review your work and then just give you feedback from there. So I've had some pretty good results with that. I'm not a premium member, so it is kind of a slow process. You know, I push something out and I can only have one thing in the queue at a time. So once I'm out of the queue, then I can enter something back in. So it usually is like a 2-week, 3-week waiting period between chapters. So that is much, much slower than what I would like. But there's all types of different resources out there for beta readers and critique partners. So it's just kind of, there has been a lot of ghosting, but eventually you find a decent group of people who you can reach out to for feedback. So
Okay, I see.
just like writing any novel or sending out any query letter, you just keep trying again and again and again, and eventually you'll find something that works for you.
Yeah, so you basically found your group of critique partners and now you guys are long-term critique partners.
Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
The forum that you mentioned, that reminds me of critiquematch.com. Did you ever use that?
I did not.
Oh, it's pretty good. I like it.
Cool.
It's
Is that how you found people for your novel?
yeah. So at first I was posting on Reddit, just I think I don't remember exactly which subreddits, but in all the writing and self-publishing ones, and even short stories, and just asking, hey, does anyone want a critique partner? I'm looking for one. This is the kind of stories I'm writing. And I kind of explained it. And then a lot of people messaged me or commented saying I can message them. And then I just shared my Google Doc with them and I read their work. And that was really fun. It's just finding a partner and stuff. Even though it was successful, it took a long time because I had to keep reposting or scrolling through the subreddit and finding other people's posts. So that's when I started doing critique match because I think I saw something about that in some article. But sounds pretty similar to the website you mentioned. It's just you first have to accept a critique partner, kind of like a friend request on social media. And then you both send each other one chapter at a time. So just like you mentioned. But I don't think the process is really slow. Like, especially because people want you to respond so that you'll critique theirs and they'll respond to yours pretty fast. And I found really good partners. It's been pretty fun. Definitely recommend checking it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I will be more than happy to put that link in the description. So check that out later.
Yeah, yeah. You should totally check it out.
Cool. So if you want, what was the greatest hurdle that you had to overcome to publish Big Island Middle School?
Oh, probably my own self-doubt and I'm just a really harsh critic of myself. And also, I just didn't know when the stories would be ready. So I just kept editing and editing and editing and finding people to read it and then editing and editing and editing. And I just didn't know when it would be ready. And I didn't know how to know if it was ready. I guess at some point, I felt like I was happy with it. So I just went for it. But it was really hard to kind of let go and be like, okay, I'm not going to change this. This is fine. I'm just going to publish it. And, self-publishing is pretty different, I guess, from traditional publishing, but it sounds like, are you going down the traditional publishing route?
I'm probably going more indie. I think I'm going to
Oh,
find editors and get them to review it and then get it up to whatever my arbitrary standards are too. And then I'm just going to do what you did, finally find the courage to go for it and then put it out there.
yeah, cool. Yeah, but what about you? What's your biggest hurdle in writing?
Whew. Right now, it's just finding the time. For a while, I guess it would be not knowing what I don't know. So the first iteration of the story, I had countless cliches. I had all types of just really bad storytelling tropes. I was broadcasting all types of things. The original version of the first book was 400,000 words, I think. And I finally convinced somebody to go through and read it. And she outright told me that she wasn't going to finish it. And she's like, well, what can you do to make this shorter? And I basically at the end, there was this side plot of like a training montage that was 100,000 words. And I just chopped it all. And that made it a lot more manageable. So really not knowing what I don't know is probably my biggest hurdle because I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that. I just kept writing and writing and writing, and I kept taking the characters where I want them to go. And then I stopped to think about what it would be like for somebody else to read that. And well, somebody told me what it was like to read that, and that made me have to completely change my mindset.
How did it feel to cut an entire storyline? Did a similar thing where I was trying to have a story that continued in between each story, and it was not working. But I was working on it for like a long, long time, and I was kind of sad to cut it, but also at the same time, I was like, it's not working. And then I wasn't too disappointed. But for you, it was probably yours was probably so much longer.
Yeah, it was really long, but again, I realized once I started looking at the story objectively and I saw, yeah, nothing's really happening here. Yes, the characters got closer together. It was some team building moments and it showed some really drastic power spikes across them, but it didn't really add anything to the story. And in fact, it made the ending story better when they were just a mess, when they weren't strong, when they weren't working well together. And so having that removing that training section allowed me to add in a lot more drama and a lot more mess and chaos to the end of the story. So I think it actually, in some ways, helped. I mean, yes, there are other parts of the story where I have gone back and forth on whether or not I should cut it. And the best part about, well, the worst part about getting certain feedback is that some people say, oh, there's not enough character development in this chapter because I cut that development. I cut those sections out in favor of jumping right into the action and right into the hook. And that was based on other people's feedback who said, it took you too long to get to this moment. You should just start right here, basically. And so when I did that, then we had other people saying, well, I wasn't as attached to these characters because we didn't have those build-up moments. So it is, you're never going to please everyone, but it is kind of difficult to know what to do and how to do it. I mean, there are an infinite number of ways to write the same sentence.
Right. Do you ever get harsh criticism from critique partners about really big parts of your chapters and stuff that you don't follow? Yeah.
Absolutely. I've like I said, I've gotten a bunch of did not finish DNFs. So I've had people saying like, I don't like this character. I intentionally made one of my main characters overly selfish, and I have since toned that back considerably. But for the first few passes with beta readers, they're like, I just couldn't get past this character, I stopped, a third of the way through the story because I just didn't want to be with them anymore. So, I mean, that does kind of hurt, especially if you are in a collaborative mindset and you're still reviewing their chapters. So it's never ideal, but again, going back, you got to take your emotions out of it and look at something objectively and then just work to resolve it. So I made that character much more agreeable, much less antagonistic, and I resolved all those issues. I haven't gone back to those beta readers to see if they would reread it, but I've tried to see and adapt based on what future beta readers think.
Okay, I see. So you kind of took their advice, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe not. You didn't let it affect you.
Right.
Yeah. I once had someone beta read my book who said he wanted me to restructure the whole thing. Like right now, each story, it's kind of like it's like about a different character, and all the stories sort of work to characterize the school more. And the school is basically the main character, right?
Right.
In my book. But the person wanted me to restructure it. He said it was really messy. And a lot of the characters, he was like commenting, we're not supposed to like this character, right? And I was like, but it was that criticism kind of hurt just because the way he worded it wasn't like, oh, what if you tried restructuring it this way? It was just this has some good this is good potential, but until you restructure it, it's not going to work. Like he was just so definite about it, and I was like kind of confused. I don't know. I didn't know whether to follow it or not, and I looked him up, and he's published so many books, and I was like, this gives him some credibility. But in the end, I not to follow his advice because it was one person out of so many.
Yeah, and I completely agree with your decision, not his. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a tableau of various different characters collectively coming together to share a story.
Yeah, like I didn't want it to be one long story. That wasn't the goal with this book, you know. It was
Right.
supposed to be a bunch of different short stories. But just to like when you're working so hard on something and then someone is like, oh well, it's not good. It's rough.
Well, for what it's worth, I really enjoy the story, but it's also
Oh.
even the best stories out there, you will still find 1-star reviews for. So, think of any classic, think of your favorite novel. You can look online right now and find 1-star reviews. So I don't take overly harsh criticism, especially hurtful criticisms, too seriously.
No, you're right. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to know whether it's good criticism or not. Like sometimes, it's harsh, but it might actually help your story. It's pretty difficult. So definitely looking at criticism and deciding what to choose or what to follow and what not to follow. That was, I guess, a challenge for me because this was the first time that I was getting people to help me edit it and stuff. This was the first time that I've written something and then asked people to read it and like just so I could go through with the process of publishing. But yeah.
Was the process smooth for you, aside from questionable feedback? But was the overall process of publishing smooth?
I think so. I guess I had a few hiccups here and there. Like I was starting to use Barnes and Noble Press. That's what I wanted to publish on originally. But then you have to submit your book for review before you can publish it. And the first few times it got rejected, and I was like, okay, that's fine. It was because I didn't make the cover image correctly. I mean, I didn't design the cover image actually, it was an artist, but I had given him the wrong size because when you're uploading the book cover, it's not supposed to be exactly 5 by 8, which is what the size of my book was supposed to be. It's supposed to be a little bit more like 5.125 inches times 8. I don't know. It's supposed to be a little bit more for the bleed and stuff. And I didn't tell him that. So then I was kind of making the image bigger on my own. And like, I don't know. So it got rejected the first few times. And that was fine. I fixed the issues. Then when it was actually ready to be published, I waited for like 2 months and they weren't getting back to me. Maybe not 2 months, that's an exaggeration. But literally this morning, I got email from Barnes& and Noble Press, your book has been rejected again. I don't know why. The first few times it took them like 2 days to reject it. And then, but yeah, while I was waiting, I got annoyed and I just went with KDP. So that was the biggest hiccup. And also, I made my own back cover because I didn't want to hire someone. I mean, I love the artist who did the front cover. It turned out really well, but I wanted to save a little bit of money with the back cover. And making that was a little bit difficult because of the whole bleed and margin issue. I had to learn about that, but yeah, that's the biggest issues I had.
That's fair. So,
Yeah.
so what's next for you? Are you coming out with a sequel to Big Island Middle School, Big Island High School, or are you going down a completely different genre, or just what's next for you?
That's a great question. I honestly don't really know because the past couple weeks since I published, I've been focusing on figuring out ways to sell the book and to raise money for UNICEF. So I'm going to be speaking at a couple of elementary schools, a couple of YMCA's to talk to kids about publishing and writing,
Oh,
which
that's
I'm
wonderful.
for. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, the first elementary school is the one that I went to. So that'll be fun. And it's with two different classrooms. And I had both those teachers. So I'm really excited. And I've just been thinking of ways to kind of get the book out there. But I've been thinking I kind of want to write a book about a kid who is trying to find their hobby or their passion and is like bad at everything. I started writing it already, but then I forgot about it. But yeah, I'm not really sure what's next. Yeah.
Okay. Well, keep us posted, and I'm more than happy to bring you back on and talk about whatever you have next.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when do you think that you're going to go through the publishing process? Do you think it's like far off or coming up?
I would like to do it within the next year, but I honestly don't know.
Okay. So what takes priority though for you? Your YouTube channel, your writing,
Yeah.
running?
Uh, the- at the moment, the YouTube channel is taking priority. This is a lot more expansive, so I usually end up with about 3 to 4 hours of footage for a 10-minute video, just simply because I keep doing take after take after take. I've gotten a lot better. I've gotten a better sound system. I've gotten better sound dampeners because I do live near a major road. So I try to do a lot of takes because every once in a while you'll get a car horn or just a loud car driving by. So get the engine background. I've sort of fixed a lot of the other issues so that I can do fewer takes. I think this past weekend I was able to do it in about under 3 hours, so that's an improvement. But we'll see how it goes, and hopefully with less time that it takes me to do these videos each week, I'll be able to spend more time writing, and that will obviously help me along the way with getting things published too.
Yeah, yeah.
So where can people find out more about Big Island Middle School? Where can they pick up a copy for themselves?
Yeah, so I have a link tree with the links to, well, first UNICEF, because I put that as a top link so people would know, I'm not going to make any money off of this book. So it's all going to UNICEF. And then I have the links to the paperback and the ebook, which are on Amazon. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, I believe it's free. And if you don't, then it's like $1.99 or something. But yeah, the ebook and paperback are on Amazon, and you can also read the book for free. It's on Google Drive, and I put that link also on the link tree. So if you don't want to spend money, but you do want to check it out, you can. And yeah, it's all in my link tree.
Great. Thank you. I am Ben Pick, and I have had the pleasure of being joined by Ketki Palande. And thank you for joining us in Running to Write. See you next time. Until then, meet a new indie author like Ketki Palande.